Today's recipe calls for thick cut bacon. We're going to be making bacon jam. So if you love bacon, I'm sure you're going to love this recipe. So with that said, let's get started.
So the first thing we're going to do is cook off 1 pound of thick cut bacon. Throw it in a large saucepan. You want to ensure that your pan is cold. This will help ensure that we render out as much fat out of our bacon as possible, and it gives everything a nice even cook, and in turn we get a nice crispy bacon. So turn your heat on medium and give everything a stir and start rendering your bacon out nice and low and slow. I used a nice Dutch oven pan for this. You can also use a nice cast iron pan or even a stainless steel pan, whatever you have. And give everything a little season with some kosher salt. We're going to render this out for about 5 to 6 minutes or until we have a nice crispy bacon. Our bacon is cut about a 1/4 inch widthwise, and it helps if your bacon is slightly frozen or really cold before you go and cut it, because when it's at room temperature, the bacon fat starts to slightly melt, making it stringy and a lot tougher to cut. So if it's really cold, it makes it a whole lot easier to cut through. Now that your bacon is nice and crispy and crunchy and delicious looking, you're going to take everything out of your pan and throw it on a plate that's been lined with paper towels to soak up some of that extra grease. We're going to take all of our bacon out of our pan and set aside so we can move on to the next step. The bacon I bought was slightly smoked, so you can play around with flavors and buy a maple bacon or a heavily smoked bacon or a peppery bacon. There's so many options, so just play around with bacons to see which one you like best. It's important to get all of the bacon out of your pan. We don't want to leave anything behind because any little impurities that are left behind has the potential to burn and ruin our bacon jam. And of course, we don't want to leave any bacon behind because it's delicious. So get everything out so we can move on to the next step. Now that you have all of your bacon out of your pan and draining on some paper towels, we're going to take all but about a tablespoon of bacon grease out of our pan. You can take all of your bacon grease out of your pan and get a precise measurement, or you can roughly eye it out like I did. You can save this bacon grease and use it to cook hash browns or any other type of vegetable, or even fry up some hamburgers in a nice cast iron pan. That'd be delicious actually. So take everything out and set it aside so we can move on to the next step. You don't want to leave too much bacon grease behind because in the end it'll make your bacon jam a little bit too greasy. Now that you have 1 tablespoon of bacon fat left in your pan and it's come up to heat, we're going to add 1 large yellow onion that has been small diced. You're going to have your heat over medium. We're going to saute our onion for about 6 to 7 minutes or until it's nice and caramelized in color. So give everything a quick stir to ensure everything gets coated in our bacon grease so we get a nice even cook. And we're going to throw a few pinches of kosher salt. You always want to season your food as you go, so if you add another thing to your pot, go ahead and season it again with salt. So give everything another stir to ensure everything gets coated in our kosher salt. The caramelized onion will add another deep, rich flavor to our bacon jam, making it that much better. Now that your onion is nice and caramelized and looks something like this, we're going to add 2 to 3 garlic cloves that have been thinly sliced. You can use minced garlic or a garlic press, whichever works. So scrape that bowl to ensure that you get all that delicious garlic. Then we're going to saute our garlic until it becomes nice and fragrant in smell. Should take about 2 to 3 minutes. And give a small pinch of kosher salt. And give that a stir to ensure everything gets coated. You're going to leave your heat on medium for this as well. Now that your garlic is nice and fragrant in smell, we'll add our crispy bacon back to our pan. That's if you have any left, if you haven't snacked on it all while you're waiting for your onion to caramelize. So give everything a nice stir to make it into one nice delicious mess. Now that you have all of your bacon stirred in, we're going to add 1/3 cup of balsamic vinegar and give everything a nice stir together. Now that you have your vinegar in your pan, we're going to add 1/3 cup of packed light brown sugar. You can also use dark brown sugar for this. Either or will work as long as it's been packed nice and tight. Once you have your sugar in your pan, go ahead and give it a stir to break it up to incorporate it into our vinegar. Once you have everything well mixed together, we're going to turn our heat up to high and bring this entire mixture up to a boil. Once it hits a boil, we're going to turn it down to about medium so we can simmer it for 30 minutes. You're going to simmer it until it becomes nice and jammy and nice and tight. You can play around with the sugars. You can do half brown sugar and half maple, or do just maple, like a maple bacon jam. That sounds delicious. Or you can deglaze your caramelized onions with some bourbon, so like a bourbon bacon jam. That also sounds really delicious. So keep an eye on this to ensure that you don't burn anything. And when you're giving your pan a stir, ensure that you scrape the bottom and the sides. This will help prevent anything from burning. Now that our bacon jam is at a simmer, you can add some fresh herbs. I went ahead and added some fresh thyme sprigs. You can also add some fresh rosemary or some fresh sage. Play around with the herbs to see what you like best. It helps add some freshness and some brightness to our bacon jam. And if you wanted to add some heat, you can add some chili powder or some cayenne powder, or even some toasted red pepper flakes to add that spicy boy flavor to it. It's really up to you. There's so many options with this stuff. You can't go wrong with anything. Now this is what your bacon jam should look like. Nice and jammy and thick like these thighs. Once it's nice and jammed up, you're going to take all of your fresh thyme sprigs out of your jam. In hindsight, it would have been a lot easier just to pick the thyme instead of throwing in the whole leaf and stems. But hey, we all can't be rocket scientists. So do your best to get all of the thyme sprigs out of there. After we've pulled our fresh thyme out, we're going to give it a taste and adjust the seasoning as needed. I went ahead and added a few pinches of salt. Now would be the perfect time to add more acid or more sweetness if you choose. Then we'll give it a quick stir to ensure all that salt gets well incorporated. Now that your bacon jam is completely cool and has been seasoned properly, we're going to store it in a mason jar. This will help keep it nice and fresh. You can store it in any storage device that you have. I just like the look of the mason jar, and it helps keep it nice and fresh as well. And of course, scrape your pan to ensure that you get all that delicious goodness out of there. We don't want to leave any of this good stuff behind. Once everything's in your mason jar, throw the lid on, and it should look something like this. Throw it in the fridge and pull it out when you want to enjoy it.
Alright, our bacon jam is done, so let's give it a shot. It looks really good. Nice and dark, rich looking. And it smells delicious from the bacon, of course. Then you got that fresh thyme in there, and then the onion smells. Let's give it a shot. This stuff packs a huge punch. It's like a flavor bomb in your mouth. It's basically everything you would want in a jam. It's fatty, it's salty, it's sweet, and it's got some acid in it. And then, of course, bacon. Bacon is always delicious, even on its own, of course. But the bacon adds the fat and the saltiness and the richness to it. And the bacon I bought was smoked, so it has the slightest smoky flavor to it, which is really good. And then to counterbalance that saltiness from the bacon is our brown sugar with that nice sweetness to it. And salty and sweet always play really well together. And then our balsamic vinegar adds the acid to help cut through all that fat, the richness, and the sweetness. And it brightens up the jam to make it more well-rounded. And then that garlic and onion is delicious. Seriously, who doesn't love garlic and onion? If you don't, you're really missing out. And then that fresh thyme adds some freshness to it, and it makes it more well-rounded as well. Seriously, it's so delicious. You definitely gotta try this stuff. It's good. Alright, that's it for today's video. This stuff is pretty easy to make, and it's crazy how little effort you have to put in to get such a great result. This stuff would be great on burgers, mac and cheese, loaded fries, on some Brussels sprouts, or any other type of vegetable you really don't want to eat. So if you enjoyed today's video, give it a like, and also find me on Instagram at TaylorMakes92. I'm gonna go do a few workouts, maybe some half crunches and some calf raises, so I don't feel so bad after eating all this bacon. So we'll see you on the next one. Nope. Damn. It's super rich in flavor from that bacon. This thing is super rich in flavor because of the I don't know. Shit. cuts through it with all the acid, which it brightens up. Yeah. There's so many things going on for this. Is the mic even on? Okay, I think so. There's so many things going on for this. There's so many flavors. It's crazy. It is crazy. There's so many great things going on for this jam. There's so much flavor in this stuff. It's crazy. Who doesn't love bacon? It has a great bacon flavor because it's bacon jam. What do you expect? That cuts through all the sweetness and the fat and brightens the sauce. It's not sauce. Richness. So if you enjoyed today's video, give it a like and also find me on Instagram. Yeah.